Yesterday, the UK Parliament made headlines by voting to decriminalise abortion in England and Wales. For many, it's a moment of progress, for others, a deep unease. In today's episode, we are taking a close look at the voices not always heard in this debate. Welcome to the podcast, What About Me? It's me, your host, Linda. For generations, women across the world have fought to have their voices heard, pushing back against systems that treated them as second-class citizens. In regions such as Middle East and Africa, that struggle remains urgent. Women continue to fight in the trenches for recognition, for the right to be seen as intellectual equals, and to participate fully in the life of their communities. In more advanced democracies such as Britain, women appear to have made great strides. They can own property, occupy public office, even ascend to the highest political roles. To a young girl in rural Africa, these freedoms might seem unimaginable. Her world is still shaped by silence, by survival. And yet, on 17th June 2025, a parliament composed of both men and women, including women leaders, voted to remove an amendment long seen as a safeguard for women in matters for reproductive rights. For many, this was not just a legal development, but a deeply controversial moral turning point. It raises uncomfortable questions. When women in power legislate on reproductive autonomy, are they doing so in the genuine interest of women or reinforcing systems that ultimately serve men? Because too often it is women who choose to carry a pregnancy while it is the male partner who walks away. And too often policies that claim to expand choice end up quietly reinforcing whose voice matters most. For some, this decision doesn't feel like a step forward in reproductive freedom. It feels like a new way to make women's bodies available while empowering men to opt out, walk away, and remain untouched by consequences. Vulnerable women, often isolated, sometimes manipulated, navigating the most private of crises under intense pressure. What does decriminalization really mean in practice? Does removing criminal penalties make space for compassion, or creates gaps where coercion can slip through? And most importantly, how do we protect women, not just in law, but in life? This isn't a conversation about sides, it's a reckoning with complicity, and it starts now. There are deep, valid concerns, and many people share. The emotional and ethical weight around late-term abortion is immense, especially when thinking about women in precarious and coercive situations. The fear that decriminalization could open the door to manipulation or abuse, particularly for those who lack strong support system, is a serious one, and it deserves careful, compassionate, and has to be debated. It's worth noting that the amendment removes criminal penalties for women themselves but does not legalize abortion up to birth without regulation. The existing medical framework, including the 24-week limit under Abortion Act 1967, still guides clinical practice. However, campaigners for and against the amendment interpret its implications differently. Some say it ensures women aren't criminalized for health crises, while others, like Christians and pro-life movements, are worried it may weaken safeguards for the vulnerable. I am one of those that I'm not worried about it, but I think it opens floodgates. My thought that may not be. So what changed and what didn't change in legislation? Before we unpack the wider implication, let's be clear on what this amendment does and doesn't change. The vote in Parliament yesterday on the 17th June 2025 approved the removal of Section 58 and 59 of the Offences Against the Person Act 1861. These are the provisions that, until now, made abortion a criminal offence in England and Wales, unless it followed strict medical criteria. So what does decriminalisation mean? It means that no woman in this country, in England and Wales, will face criminal charges simply by ending a pregnancy, even in difficult or tragic circumstances. Medical professions are still bound by the existing framework under the Abortion Act 1967, which, among other things, sets a 24-week limit in most cases. In other words, abortion is not suddenly legal up to birth. That's a common misconception. The medical guidelines remain, but the legal threat hanging over women themselves, that's what this amendment addresses. First, supporters say this change brings compassion, especially for women dealing with miscarriages or desperate situations, but critics worry it may erode important boundaries, especially when it comes to protecting women from coercion or exploitation in late-stage pregnancies. Now, let's shift the lens, because beyond the legal language and parliamentary process, they are women, real lives, real risks. And remember, women are between the age of 16 to 18 to 18 to 21 and 21, then you go beyond. Like, the most vulnerable are within that age, 16 to 19. Imagine this: a 19-year-old woman, estranged from her family, couch surfing between friends' flats. She's several months into a pregnancy she hadn't planned, and the father, an older partner, has made it clear he won't support her if she keeps it. There is no violence, no loud threats, but a relentless drip of pressure. You know you are not ready. It will ruin your life. There is still time to take care of it. Now, place her in a world where abortion is decriminalized, but oversight is light. No mandatory second opinions, no one to notice her silence or ask the hard question: is this your choice or someone else's? This is the concern voiced by many critics of the amendment. Not opposition to choice, but a plea for protection, for recognizing that some women, especially young or marginalized women, don't arrive at decisions freely. They are carried there, nudged there, and frightened into them. Safeguarding vulnerable women isn't about denying them access. It's about making sure their choices are truly their own. But there is another side of this conversation, and it's spoken softly in countless stories, especially from teenage mothers. So many recount a turning point that wasn't legal or clinical, but deeply viscerally human. The feeling life moved inside them for the first time. They will say, I wanted to end the pregnancy. I was scared, ashamed, but then I felt the baby kick, and suddenly it wasn't just something happening to me, it was someone. These stories matter not to shame those who choose differently, but to remind us that pregnancy, especially in its later stages, can come with a shift, not just in biology, but in belief. For some, the law's restriction at 24 weeks isn't just a barrier, it's a moment of pause, a forced reckoning with what's growing inside them. And for many young women, that pause became a turning point, not because they were free from fear, but because something changed their fear into attachment. Yet, here is the tension. If the law no longer imposes that boundary, will some never get that moment to reconsider? Are we losing not just regulation, but reflection? Now, let's ground this in what the data and the doctors actually tell us. Abortions beyond 24 weeks are rare. The vast majority, over 90%, happen within the first 12 weeks. When they do occur later, it's usually under heartbreaking circumstances. Fetal abnormalities, severe threats to the mother's health, or cases where young women didn't even realize they were pregnant. Medical professions argue that criminal law isn't the right tool for handling those cases. We treat women, not prosecute them, said one doctor in testimony before Parliament. Supporters of decriminalization say this change ensures care, not courtrooms, in moments of crisis. But others worry we are tiptoeing toward a cultural shift where boundaries that once signaled graffiti might begin to blur. That, without legal thresholds, personal or professional hesitation could give way to conveniency or pressure. They ask, when does a medical exemption become a moral blind spot? And if we remove the last legal line, do we risk making late-term abortion not unthinkable, but more imaginable? It's a question at the crossroads of compassion and conscience, and it's where many are still searching for footing. As we close, I want to step back from the specifics of abortion law and ask a broader question, one that's been haunting me lately. When it comes to life and death, who gets to decide and who gets protected? In Canada, where assisted suicide is legal, we have seen stories that chill the soul. A disabled veteran asking for help with a wheelchair lift was offered medical assistance in dying instead. Others struggling with poverty or mental illnesses have been quietly shown towards death, not because they wanted it, but because the system couldn't offer them anything better. These aren't dystopian hypotheticals, they are happening now, and they force us to ask, when we remove criminal penalties in names of compassion, are we also removing the last barrier between desperation and disappearance? That's why debates like abortion, assisted suicide, and end-to-life care must never be left solely to legislators or medical experts. They belong to all of us, to the common man, to the mother, to the daughter, to the neighbor who sees what the system misses. Because when the law grows silent and the clinic door is open, someone still has to ask, are we sure? Is this really what you want? Or is it just what you've been left with? Let's not confuse freedom with abandonment, and let's not call it progress if it leaves the most vulnerable behind. That's all for today's episode. If this conversation stirred something in you, questions, argument, discomfort, I would love to hear from you. Reach out on socials, send a voice note, or just reflect quietly as you go about your day. Not every answer arrives quickly, but every question we dare to ask moves us closer to understanding. Until next time, stay thoughtful, stay brave, and always thank you for listening. It's me, Linda, your host, with the podcast What About Me?